Well, hello, Dr. John here again. Hey, what's one of the quickest ways to kill your marriage? Well, we started a series on last week's Overcomer blog about the 7 marriage myths. So to believe and operate as if any of those are true definitely will kill your marriage. Well, I want to welcome you again to our video blog, and I'm Dr. John Hawkins Sr., and we're coming to you here from Gateway Counseling Center right here in Boynton Beach, Florida. And we gave you part 1 last week. We talked to you about 3 of the myths. Myth 1, love is enough. No, it's not. Myth 2, it shouldn't be this hard. Yes, it will be hard to make a marriage work. Myth 3, maybe we're just not right for each other. Well, that could be, but you want to find that out before you get married. And a lot of times what people need is just good communication skills and conflict resolution skills to work through the differences in their life. And so we want you to understand these myths and the corresponding truths so you can have good marriages, good relationships. So let's take a look here at myth number 4. Myth number 4 is I can change them. Well, no, you can't really. We don't have control of other human beings. This is a common myth for marriage that a lot of women believe, because women have a more nurturing nature, and they think, if they have somebody that will just love them and understand them enough, they see the potential and they can change. Well, they can have great potential, but you don't know if you're going to be able to bring it out of them. All you can really count on is the first person that stands before you right now. You don't know if anything is going to change after that. Again, you have to remember, you're not God. You cannot change people. We can influence people, we can manipulate people, we can coerce and threaten and give ultimatums. We can do all of that, but we can't make people do what they really don't want to do. And so, you've got to really take the time to get to know somebody from the inside out, because when we're dating, that's where we put our A game on. We're trying to impress people. We put our best face forward. And what you're trying to figure out is, okay, is this person engaged in box checking? Their objective is to try to win me. So what do they have to do to reach that goal? That's box checking, because then once they've accomplished that and they have you, then they'll go back to their old self. Who the real them really is. Versus a heart change, that's a person who realizes, I've got certain negatives about myself, and I don't like the way I am, and I don't think that's really pleasing to other people and pleasing to God, and I need to make some serious heart changes here. Whether I marry this person, not marry this person, these are changes that I'm going to make for myself. That's a heart change, and that's something that lasts because it's coming from the inside out. And that's the one that you can count on, because they're not changing it for you. The things that cause people to change are the negative consequences of poor decisions. What I call the motivational crisis, where the pain of staying the same is less than the pain of making the changes. Well, let's see if I said that right. Anyway, you've got to get more benefit out of making the changes versus staying the same, or you won't want to change. And God changes, like I said, from the inside out. You read the story of the prodigal son. They took his dad's inheritance, went off, wasted it on wild, sinful living, and he woke up in a hog pen, and the quote is, he came to himself. In other words, he saw things the way they really were and saw himself for who he really was and said, this is stupid. My dad's servants have it better than this. I'm going to arise and go to my father and ask him to forgive me. That was an example of a heart change. See, there's a couple of realities we have to accept. One is whoever you marry is going to be different than you. Every person is different from somebody else. So we have to be able to accept those differences. And number two is we're all going to come in with a certain amount of baggage because none of us are perfect people. So we have to be able to look at that baggage, look at our own baggage, and decide, can I accept that baggage, or is there more there than what I can work with, that I want to take on? Can I accept them as they are if they never change? That's how I can understand that, all right, I got to work with that reality and accept I don't have the power to change people. Here's myth number 5. You need to be like me. That's kind of related to myth number 4. It's part of the attraction is the differences that we have in each other. We get attracted to somebody. They're a different gender. They're a different personality. They have a different background, different life experiences. And we're like two sides of a coin. I see something there that I like and I admire. I'd like some of that in my life, so I bring you into my life. But after I get to know you, then I see the flip side of the coin. You have some negatives where I have positives. That irritates me. And so what we have to do is use our good communication skills to navigate those differences and blend them together where we rub off on each other. We realize, hey, we're better together than we are separate because of these different strengths, and we help complete each other and complement each other. And so that being said, we accept each other for who we are. Then when is it legitimate to ask my mate to make a change? Well, you're not asking them to change who they are at the core, because that's kind of impossible, but how they're acting, how they're saying things and treating me, when that's draining your core emotional bucket. And that's a legitimate change, because to make a marriage work, you got to fill each other's bucket. For the guy, the feeling respected, admired. For the woman, feeling secure in their love relationship, feeling top priority. And you want to fill those buckets for each other. So when you're draining my bucket, then that's a legitimate ask. It's like, could you say that different? Could you do that different? And sometimes people wonder, well, why did I even choose this person? They're so different than me. Well, we've touched on this before, but, from our family of origin, our initial caregivers, how these people show me love, that it sets a template in my brain. What does love look like? What should I expect to receive? My brain is being formed. And so whether it's good or bad, it becomes familiar to me. And my brain loves the familiar. I feel comfortable with it. That familiar could be, correct and good, and it can be a wonderful thing, or it can be a terrible thing. But either way, I'm going to pick the familiar. I'm going to pick what I'm used to because I feel comfortable, even if it's bad for me. Even if I don't like it, it makes me feel miserable. That's the power of the unconscious, in your life. And so we have to take a look at that and understand how that has been working, in my life. That sometimes people say, well, I don't know, there's just something about that person that I'm drawn to. Well, you have to figure out what that template is in your brain, because they're not going to be like you. You just want to be sure they're not like a negative caregiver that set a negative template for you. Here's myth number 6. My mate is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about them. Well, I want you to see me in a year and see if you still feel like that. Because if you do, that means you haven't been paying attention to them. That old phrase, love is blind. That's what we call the infatuation stage. That lasts maybe a year and a half. The dopamine levels are high. It's like kind of being in a fantasy, or, being on some kind of a drug high. And that's what we love about love. We love that feeling. When my mind, all they do is think about this person in a positive way, my heart beats out of my chest, my hands get sweaty, I can hardly wait to be with them. But you got to be a little careful here, because, when you talk to addicts, one of the things they'll say is once they get sober, is they miss the high. So a big part of addiction is chasing the high. Once I come off that high, I got to find another high. And people can do that. They love that high of being in love, which we're talking about an emotion. We're talking about emotional experience that lasts for a short period of time before it goes on to a next phase of what love is. So if we're not careful, after we get in a marriage and some of that wears off, we just feel like, I think I fell out of love. And so I need to go find somebody else where I can get that high again. Well, if you do that, you're going to be changing mates, every other year. You've got to understand what love really is, because that's not very practical. It's like a trip to Disney World, or going to a movie to escape. That's a great feeling, but eventually we have to come back to real life. And so in a marriage is not a fantasy. Fantasy doesn't require any work. We just pop in, enjoy it, and then pop out. And so, you have to realize marriage isn't a fantasy. It's going to take work. We can't just discard it because we're tired of it. Once I see the reality of the person, that's when the work of marriage really begins. And here's myth number 7. If it doesn't work out, we can always get a divorce. We have a very disposable society today. We use things and throw them away. But that's not how marriage is designed. Marriage is designed, it's a commitment to a lifetime covenant. And that's what we have to be committed to. Like I said, it's not something we try on, and if it doesn't fit, or I feel like it's getting a little old, then I'll just get rid of it and go get another one. No, you don't enter into marriage flippantly. You don't just go on a whim. You don't go there just by some emotion that you have, because divorce is too hurtful. It's too painful. Too many people are hurt. Too many children's lives are affected for future generations. This is something we have to take, serious. It's immature and selfish to look at marriage that way. There's an ideal design for marriage that will bring us the most happiness. And it's not seeing it as just a temporary thing. When we get an argument with our mate, we don't want to use the divorce word. We don't want to start throwing that around, or words that sound like it. We want to close that door and say, listen, we're not happy right now, so we're either going to live unhappy, or we're going to figure this out and we're going to solve this that's going on. Now, I understand divorce is a reality. This is a broken world, and bad things happen, and bad things happen to, good people. But so often, people make choices, and because of the hardness of people's hearts, you can't make a person stay with you if they don't want to stay with you, or stay faithful to you if they don't want to stay faithful to you. So I know some people don't have much of a choice, when it comes to divorce. And if that happens, you can count on God. You don't have to see yourself as just some statistic. One of the things I like about God is He meets you where you are, no matter what you've been through in your life. And so He can take you where you are, and when you start to align with His principles, He can make things better for you. We just have to accept in a marriage, there's going to be good times and bad times. There's going to be the rich times and the poor times. There's going to be the healthy times and the sick times. There's going to be the better times and the worst times. Nobody can predict the future, but that's what we're committing to. That's our covenant vows. We look out there in the future and say, hey, who knows? It can be any of these things, positive or negative, but I want you to know I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to be there for you no matter what. And sometimes people feel like, boy, I don't know if I can make a commitment like that. Well, you just have to have that kind of heart, and then trust that God, with His grace, is enabling you to fulfill that. Now, on our own, we learn things, we learn about marriage, we learn skills and tools that will help us in that. But marriage can be a great adventure. It's going to have some tough times, but those tough times will deepen the bond. They'll change each part of us as people. It's work, it's not fantasy. But like I said, don't see yourself as a statistic if you've been to that point. Just realize reality and separate it from the myths and say, okay, I'm going in with my eyes wide open. I understand what it takes to make a marriage work. Well, listen, this is Dr. John, and I always want you to remember that you can overcome. That's what we're designed for, to be overcomers. So I hope you'll be able to overcome the challenges of your marriage. If you can't give us a call, go to gatewaycounseling.com, and we'll be happy to be there, talk to you, try to be a help for you. In the meantime, you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.